That Friday night, as I held the watch I had chosen so carefully in my hands, I never imagined that my son Michael would look at it with contempt and say in front of 80 guests, "What a ridiculous gift! You're useless, Mom." I still feel the weight of those words as if they had landed on my chest just a few minutes ago. My name is Emily Thompson. I am 60 years old, and this is the story I kept silent for too long because I was ashamed to admit that my own son, the one I gave everything to, treated me as if I was worthless. But today, I am going to tell the whole story because maybe someone else needs to hear it. It all started 3 weeks before his 35th birthday. Michael lived with me in the family home, the same house his father and I bought with years of hard work. He had his own suite on the second floor. He used my car whenever he wanted, and I still cooked his favorite meals on Sundays. I thought we were close. I thought he needed me as much as I needed him. One April afternoon, while I was watering the gardenias, I heard his voice from the terrace. He was on the phone with someone. "Yeah, man, my mom is simple. She doesn't understand anything about brands or style. She'll probably get me something old-fashioned for my birthday." He laughed, a cold laugh I didn't recognize. "But whatever I have to put up with her, I still live here and use her money." The water from the hose kept running while I stood frozen among the flowers. My hands were shaking. I couldn't sleep that night. I got up 3 times to look at the Swiss watch I had reserved for him at Mr. Thompson's jewelry store. It was a classic Longines Elegant with a steel case and a brown leather strap. I had saved 6 months of my pension to buy it. In the box, I also kept an old photograph where Michael was 5 years old, hugging me in my mother's garden. He was wearing the first toy watch I ever gave him. He used to say that when he grew up, he wanted a real watch, just like his grandfather's. I remembered all of that, every detail, every childhood promise. But now I was afraid that this gift wouldn't be enough for him. The following days were strange. Michael barely spoke to me. He came home late, left his clothes on the floor, and when I asked him how he was, he answered in monosyllables. "Fine, Mom. We'll talk later. I'm busy." One morning, while making coffee, I found an invitation printed with gold letters on the dining room table. It was for his birthday party. The address was for a fancy venue downtown. 80 confirmed guests. He hadn't said anything to me. When he came down for breakfast, I asked him in a calm voice, "Michael, are you having a party?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Yeah, my friends organized everything. It's going to be great." "And am I going?" He shrugged. "Obviously, you're my mom." But he said it like it was an obligation, like I was a box he had to check. That afternoon, while I wrapped the watch in navy blue paper with a silver bow, I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't just a gift. It was everything I could give. My love, my effort, my memory of when he loved me, too. The night of the party, I put on my pearl gray dress, the one I had worn to my cousin's wedding. I fixed my hair. I put on the silver earrings my mother left me. I wanted to look good. I wanted Michael to be proud of me. I arrived at the venue at 8. The lights were bright. There was loud music tables with white tablecloths and expensive flower centerpieces. I recognized some of his friends. None of them said hello to me. Michael was in the center of the room, surrounded by people, a drink in his hand. He was wearing a black suit, white shirt, no tie. He looked handsome, successful. He looked happy. When he saw me, his face tightened for a second and he walked over. "Mom, you're here?" "Sit over there, okay with the ants." He pointed to a table in the back near the kitchen. I didn't say anything. I just walked over and sat down, holding the gift in my hands. An hour passed. No one came to talk to me. I drank mineral water. I watched everyone laugh, dance, and clink glasses. Michael didn't look towards my table even once, until it was time for the presents. They set up a long table in front of everyone. People started bringing up large bags from international brands, thick envelopes. I waited. I took a deep breath. I stood up and walked toward him with my navy blue package. The music softened. Everyone turned to look. Michael looked at me with that expression I now know so well. Annoyance. Shame. I held out the gift with a smile. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I hope you like it." He took it without looking me in the eye. He unwrapped it slowly as if he didn't want to. When he saw the watch box, he opened it. He looked at the Longines for 3 eternal seconds, and then it happened. He looked up. He stared right at me, And he said loudly so everyone could hear, "Seriously, Mom? This watch, what a ridiculous gift." He laughed, a loud, cruel laugh, and then he added, still smiling, "You're useless, Mom. Completely useless." The room went silent. 80 people were staring at me. I felt the floor open up beneath my feet. Sometimes we trust the wrong people. Have you ever been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read it. Before I continue, I need you to understand something important. Michael wasn't always like this. There was a time years ago when my son was different, when his eyes lit up seeing me come home, when he would run to me screaming, "Mommy," every time I got back from work. We were a team, him and me. His father, David, died when Michael was just 12, a sudden heart attack while playing tennis at the club. From one day to the next, we were alone. I was 37, with a son who had just lost his hero. I remember those first few weeks like they were yesterday. Michael slept hugging his father's jacket. He didn't talk at school. He barely ate. One afternoon, I found him in David's study, sitting in his office chair, trying to put on his dress shoes. "I want to be like him, Mom," he told me with tears in his eyes. "I want you to be proud of me." I hugged him so tight I can still smell his freshly washed hair. From that day on, I worked twice as hard. I took extra shifts at the accounting firm where I worked. I sold some jewelry David had given me, all so Michael could stay in his private school, so he wouldn't lack anything, so he wouldn't feel the emptiness of his father in the form of hardship. On weekends, we cooked together. He would help me make bread. He'd get dough on his hands and laugh when I put flour on his nose. We'd prepare my grandmother's special recipe, the one with 28 ingredients that takes 3 days to make. "Someday, I'm going to cook this for my wife," he'd say while stirring the pot, "and I'll be right there to teach her all your secrets," I replied. He would smile, a genuine, true smile. On Sunday afternoons, we sat in the garden under the oak tree David planted the year Michael was born. I read him stories when he was little, and when he got older, we talked about everything, about his dreams, his fears, the girls he liked at school. "Mom, you're always going to be with me, right?" he asked me once. He was 14, always sweetheart, until I can't be anymore. And even after, he rested his head on my shoulder. "I'm going to take care of you too when you're old." I promise. I kept that promise in my heart like a treasure. When Michael turned 18 and got into college, I was so proud I cried through his entire high school graduation. He was going to study business administration at a good local university, just like his father. I bought him a new laptop, clothes, books. Every month I deposited extra money for him to go out with his friends, so he wouldn't feel less than anyone. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best us," he'd say every time, and I felt complete. The first few years were good. Michael came home on weekends, brought his friends, and filled the house with laughter and music. I'd cook for everyone, and they'd tell me, "Mrs. Thompson, your cooking is delicious." Michael would hug me from behind while I stood at the stove. "It smells like home, Mom." Those words were worth more than anything. But something started to change when he turned 25. He got his first job at a consulting firm. He earned good money, wore expensive suits, and went out with people at his level. He met Jessica, a girl from a wealthy family who studied interior design. She came to the house sometimes, but she looked at me strangely, as if my living room wasn't elegant enough, as if my paintings were outdated. "Emily, have you ever thought about remodeling?" she asked me once, touching the curtains. "This looks very old." Michael said nothing. I just smiled. "I like it this way. It holds memories." Jessica made a face. Shortly after Michael started coming around less, his calls became shorter. When I asked if he wanted to eat at home on Sunday, he'd say, "I can't, Mom. I have plans." "What plans, son? With Jessica, with friends, you know." No, I didn't know. One day I dared to tell him, "Michael, I feel like we don't spend time together anymore." He was staring at his phone. "Oh, Mom, don't exaggerate." "I'm not a kid anymore." I swallowed hard. "I know, but I'm your mother." "That never changes." He sighed as if I were a burden. "Sure, Mom, sure." After that, I tried not to bother him so much, not to be intense, as he put it. But I missed my son. I missed our talks, our meals, our laughter. The house felt empty even when he was there. Jessica and Michael broke up a year later. He didn't tell me why. He just came home one night with red eyes and locked himself in his room. I knocked on the door. "Michael, are you okay?" "Leave me alone, Mom." I made his favorite comfort food, a chicken and rice casserole. I left it outside his door with a glass of orange juice. The next morning, the empty plate was in the hallway. There was no thank you. There was nothing. But I settled for knowing that at least he had eaten, because that's what mothers do. We settle for crumbs when we used to have feasts of love. The years passed. Michael had more girlfriends, more jobs, more friends I never met. He became distant, cold, busy. I was still there waiting, cooking, cleaning his clothes, paying the house bills. He never asked for permission to keep living with me after he turned 30. He just stayed. And I never asked him to leave, because a part of me still believed that one day my son would come back. That the boy who hugged me in the garden, who promised to take care of me when I was old, was still in there somewhere. Until that night of his birthday, when he looked me in the eye in front of 80 people and called me useless, I still had hope. But the words I heard after his insult showed me the complete truth, and that truth hurt more than anything I had ever felt before. After Michael called me useless in front of all those guests, I expected someone to say something, for someone to defend me, for someone to tell my son he was wrong. But no one did. The 80 guests stayed silent for 3 seconds, which felt like 3 years. Then, as if nothing had happened, the music volume went back up and people continued their conversations. I just stood there holding my purse with shaking hands, watching Michael drop the watch box onto the gift table as if it were trash. One of his friends, a tall guy with a beard and a designer shirt, walked up to him laughing. "Man, your mom really missed the mark." "A Longines." "Seriously," Michael laughed too. "I know, man. I told her not to bother, but you know how moms are. They always think it's the thought that counts." "So what are you going to do with it?" Michael picked up the box and tossed it into a plastic bag under the table. "I don't know. Give it to the doorman or something." My heart shattered. I walked toward the exit without saying goodbye. My legs could barely hold me. I felt like everyone was watching me, like everyone knew I was that ridiculous old-fashioned mother who didn't understand her son's world. When I got to the parking lot, I got in my car and locked the door. And there, alone in the dark, I let out the sobs I had been holding back. I cried for my son, for the boy he was, and for the man he had become. I cried for myself for being so blind, for believing that love was enough. I cried for David for not being here to see what his son had turned into. I don't know how long I sat there. When I could finally breathe, I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. My mascara was running, my eyes were swollen, my hair was a mess. I looked exactly how I felt. Broken. I drove home in silence. The city streets were lit up. There were couples holding hands, families coming out of restaurants. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone but me. When I arrived, the house was dark and cold. I came in the front door and left my shoes in the entryway. I walked up the stairs slowly. Each step felt heavy, as if I were carrying stones on my shoulders. I sat on my bed still in my dress and looked at the photograph on my dresser. It's of Michael at 8 years old at his first communion. He's wearing a white suit, his hands folded in prayer, and he's looking at me with a clean, sincere smile. "What happened to you, son?" I asked the photo. "When did you stop loving me?" The photograph didn't answer. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. I thought about everything I had done wrong, all the times I might have overprotected him, or spoiled him too much, or failed to teach him the value of things. But I also thought about all the times he had told me he loved me, all the promises he had made, all the moments I believed we were a team. It had all been a lie. Michael got home at 4 a.m. I heard him open the front door, heard him walk up the stairs, laughing with someone on the phone, heard him close his bedroom door without even passing by mine. He didn't come to apologize. He didn't come to explain. He just went to sleep as if nothing had happened. The next morning I was in the kitchen making coffee when he came down. He was wearing expensive pajamas, the designer kind that cost over $200. He looked rested, calm. "Good morning, Mom," he said as he opened the refrigerator. I didn't answer. I just stared at him. He took out a carton of orange juice, poured himself a glass, and sat at the kitchen island with his phone in his hand. I approached him slowly. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Michael," I said, my voice trembling, "we need to talk." He didn't even look up from his phone. "About what, Mom? About what happened last night?" He shrugged. "What happened last night?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You humiliated me. In front of all your guests. You called me useless." He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold and different. "Oh, Mom, don't exaggerate. It was a joke." "A joke doesn't feel like that, son." "Well, then you're just too sensitive." I felt something break inside me. "Sensitive Michael, I gave you that watch with all my love. I saved for 6 months to buy it for you." He took a sip of juice and sighed as if I were an inconvenience. "And I appreciate the gesture, Mom, but it's not what I wanted." "And what did you want?" "Something better, something actually elegant. My friends got me incredible things. One of them gave me a Rolex, Mom. A Rolex." "I don't have money for a Rolex, I know that. I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying, well, it would have been better if you hadn't given me anything, if you couldn't give something decent." His words hit me like slaps. "Something decent," I repeated. "Michael, that watch is beautiful. It's classic. It's quality. It's old, Mom. It looks like a grandpa watch. Your grandfather wore one just like it." "Exactly. A grandpa watch." He got up from the island and walked to the living room, glass in hand. I followed him. "Son, I don't understand what happened to you. You weren't like this." He dropped onto the sofa and turned on the TV. "Mom, people change. I grew up. I have different tastes now. You can't expect me to still be the little boy who hugs his mom all the time." "I don't expect that. I just expect respect." "And I do respect you," he said without looking at me. "But I also need you to understand that we're not the same anymore. I move in different circles. I have a different life. And sometimes your things, well, they just don't fit in." "My things don't fit in. No, Mom. Your gifts, the way you dress, the way you talk. It's all just, I don't know, outdated." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Do I embarrass you?" He was silent for a few seconds. Then he said in a voice so casual it chilled my blood, "Sometimes, yeah." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there looking at this man I no longer recognized. "I understand," I finally said. And I went to my room. I locked the door and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking. My chest ached as if someone had stabbed me. As I tell all this, I wonder where you might be listening. Write the name of your city in the comments. For the next few weeks, I tried to be invisible. I got up early to make Michael's breakfast, but I left it on the table and left before he came down. I washed his clothes without a word, cleaned the house in silence, made dinner, and put it in labeled containers in the fridge. I was still his mother. I was still taking care of him. But I no longer expected anything in return. He didn't seem to notice the change either. He continued his routine. He left early, came back late, brought friends over, sometimes used my car when his was in the shop. He'd ask to borrow money for emergencies he never explained, and I gave it to him. I always gave it to him because I was afraid of losing him completely. One afternoon, while folding his clean laundry in his room, I found papers on his desk. They were credit card statements, all in my name. I picked them up with shaking hands and read the charges. Expensive restaurants, bars, designer clothes, trips, hotels. It all added up to over $20,000 in the last 3 months. I hadn't made any of these purchases. I ran down the stairs. Michael was in the living room watching a series on TV. "What is this?" I asked, showing him the papers. He barely glanced at them. "Oh yeah, I used your cards." "Mine was maxed out." "You used my cards without asking me." "Mom, we live in the same house. It's not a big deal." "It's $20,000, Michael, and you're going to pay it back. When I can. In the meantime..." He stood up from the sofa, irritated. "You know what, Mom? I'm sick of you complaining. It's always the same thing. Everything bothers you. Everything hurts your feelings." Why can't you just be like other moms and support your son without nagging all the time? I froze. I have supported you your entire life. Yeah, well, it seems like it's not enough, right? Because here you are counting every dollar you spend on me. I'm not counting the money, Michael. I'm counting your lack of respect. He grabbed his jacket from the hook and walked to the door. I'm leaving. I don't want to argue with you anymore. You're exhausting. And he left. I stood alone in the middle of the living room holding those statements, watching the door close behind him. He didn't come home that night, or the next. I called him 20 times. I left voicemails. I sent text messages asking if he was okay, if he needed anything, if he wanted me to pick him up. He didn't answer a single one. Until 3 days later at 11 at night, I got a text from him. I'm fine, at a friend's house. Don't worry. Don't worry, he said, as if it were that easy. As if a mother could just stop worrying about her son, even when that son had hurt her in every way possible. He came back a week later. He didn't knock. He used his key. He went straight up to his room without saying hello. I heard loud music until 3 a.m. The next morning he came down as if nothing had happened, poured himself coffee, took a pastry from the counter. Morning, Mom. I was sitting at the dining table with a cup of tea that had already gone cold. Where were you? I asked. I told you, with a friend. What friend? What do I have to report to you now? I'm your mother, Michael. You live in my house. He slammed his coffee mug on the counter. Ah, right. Your house. It's always your house, isn't it? You always have to remind me. I'm not reminding you to hurt you. I'm reminding you because you seem to have forgotten. I haven't forgotten, Mom, but I'm not going to live asking for permission for everything like I'm 15. I'm not asking you to ask for permission. I'm asking for respect. I already told you I respect you. Your actions say otherwise. Michael looked at me with those cold eyes I no longer recognized, and then he said something I will never forget. You know what your problem is, Mom. You never got over Dad's death, and now you want to keep me tied to you like I'm supposed to replace him. But I'm not him, and I'm not going to live my life trying to make you happy. I was speechless. He grabbed his keys and left. And I just sat there in that kitchen, full of memories, wondering at what point everything had broken. At what point my son had become a stranger. At what point I had stopped being his mom and become a burden. But the answer would come soon. Sooner than I thought. Because there are things a mother can endure. And then there are things that as much as they hurt force you to wake up. After that conversation, something changed in me. It wasn't a big change. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was more like a silent surrender. I stopped fighting. I stopped complaining. I stopped waiting for Michael to be the son I once knew. I simply became what he seemed to need, an invisible mother who was there when he needed her, but who didn't bother him when he didn't. The days became a mechanical routine. I'd get up at 6, make coffee, leave breakfast ready, clean the house. Though Michael didn't seem to notice, wash his clothes, iron his shirts, and tidy his room when he left. I did it all without expecting a thank you, because I had learned it would never come. One morning, while making his bed, I found a manila envelope under his pillow. It was open. From the way it was placed, it was obvious he wasn't trying to hide it. I hesitated. I didn't like going through my son's things. I never had. But some instinct told me I needed to see what was inside. I pulled out the papers with shaking hands. They were legal documents, contracts, and on the first page, I saw something that froze my blood. Application for property deed transfer. Property located in nice suburb area. Current owner Emily Thompson. Applicant for transfer Michael Thompson. I read the document 3 times to make sure I understood. My son was processing paperwork to take my house. I kept reading. There were copies of my ID, my birth certificate, the house title. All taken from my personal file from the desk drawer I never locked because I never imagined I'd need to. There was a handwritten note in the corner in Michael's handwriting. Ask Mr. Mendoza if we can fast-track this. Need liquidity. House worth approx. $800K. $800,000. My house was worth $800,000, and my son wanted to sell it. I sat on the edge of his bed because my legs wouldn't support me. The envelope fell from my hands, and the papers scattered on the floor. I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. I tried to find a logical reason. I tried to think that maybe there was an explanation, that maybe Michael had a valid reason for doing this without consulting me. But there wasn't one. My son was trying to steal my house, the house his father and I bought with years of effort, the house where Michael took his first steps, the house where we celebrated all our Christmases, the house where David died, the house that was the only thing I had left. I heard the front door open. Michael was home. I heard his steps on the stairs. I quickly gathered the papers and put them back in the envelope. I placed it under the pillow, exactly as I had found it. I wiped away tears I didn't know I had shed and walked out of his room just as he reached the hallway. "Mom, what were you doing in my room?" "I was just making your bed." He looked at me suspiciously. "Making my bed, I told you don't need to do that." "I know, but I like it to be tidy." He went into his room and closed the door without another word. I walked down the stairs slowly, holding onto the railing because I felt like I was going to faint. I got to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were shaking so much I spilled half of it. What was I going to do? Should I confront him? Should I call a lawyer? Should I kick him out of the house? All these options rushed through my mind, but in the end, I did nothing. Because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my son completely. Afraid of being alone. Afraid to admit that the person I loved most in the world was betraying me. So I swallowed that secret just as I had swallowed so many others, and I continued to be his mother. The next few days were torture. Every time Michael came down for breakfast, I looked at him and thought, "When are you going to tell me? When will you have the courage to say you want to take my house?" But he said nothing. He acted normal. He ate what I cooked, used my car, watched TV in my living room, as if everything was fine. As if he wasn't stabbing me in the back. One night, 2 weeks after I found those documents, Michael came home with a woman. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard the door open and laughter. A woman's laugh. I peeked into the living room and saw a young woman, maybe 25, blonde, in tight clothes and high heels. She was hanging on Michael's arm like she'd known him forever. "Mom," Michael said when he saw me. "This is Sarah. Sarah, this is Emily, my mom." The girl extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So nice to meet you." "You too," I replied. Michael led her straight to the living room. "Want something to eat, Sarah? My mom's a great cook." "Oh no, babe, I already ate, plus I have to watch my diet." They sat on the sofa. He turned on the TV. She kicked off her shoes and put her feet up on the coffee table. My feet had never been on that table. I went back to the kitchen and kept making dinner, even though I wasn't hungry anymore. Every few minutes, I heard them laughing, their quiet conversations, the sound of them kissing. I felt like a stranger in my own home. After a while, Michael came into the kitchen. "Mom, Sarah is staying the night." I looked at him surprised. "Staying the night here." "Yeah, here. Any problem with that?" 1,000 problems, I wanted to say, but I only said no, none. "Perfect. Then we're going upstairs." And he left. I just stood there with a spoon in my hand watching my son go upstairs with this woman he had just met. I barely slept that night. I heard noises from upstairs. Music, laughter. Things a mother shouldn't have to hear in the house where she raised her son. The next morning, Sarah came down first. She was wearing one of Michael's shirts and nothing else. She walked barefoot into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator like it was her own, and took out a yogurt. "Morning," she said without looking at me. "Good morning." She sat at the island and ate her yogurt while looking at her phone. She made no conversation. She asked no questions. She was just there, occupying space. Michael came down 20 minutes later, freshly showered, smelling like my expensive soap that I saved for special occasions. "Did you eat, Sarah?" "Yeah, babe, although your mom doesn't have any almond milk, just regular milk." Michael looked at me as if I had committed an unforgivable crime. "Mom." "Next time buy almond milk, okay." I nodded without saying anything. Sarah left after breakfast. Michael walked her to the door. They said goodbye with a long kiss that I tried not to see. When he came back, I was clearing the dishes. "Did you like Sarah?" he asked me. "I don't know her really, but you like her, right?" "Yeah, she's amazing. She's a model, works for international brands, super successful." "That's nice. And she really likes me, not like the others." I looked him in the eye. I wanted to ask him, "And do you like me? Do you still love me even though you're trying to steal my house?" But I didn't. I just smiled and kept washing the dishes. As I tell all this, I wonder where you might be listening. Write the name of your city in the comments. Sarah started coming over more often, 3 times a week, then 4, then she'd stay for the entire weekend. She always treated me with that cold, distant courtesy. Never rude, but never warm, as if I were the hired help. One Saturday afternoon, they were both in the living room watching a movie. I walked by with a basket of clean laundry. "Mrs. Thompson," Sarah called out, "can you bring me a glass of water with ice?" I stopped. I looked at her. She was smiling at me, waiting. "Of course," I said. I went to the kitchen. I prepared the glass of water with ice. I brought it to her. "Thanks," she said without looking at me. Michael didn't even turn his head. That night, while I was folding laundry in my room, I heard voices from Michael's room. They were talking loudly, arguing. I moved closer to the door and listened. "I just don't get why you still live here, Michael," Sarah was saying. "You're 35. You should have your own place." "I know. It's complicated." "What's complicated? Your mom supports you like you're a kid." "She doesn't support me. I pay for my own things." "Oh, really? Do you pay rent? Do you pay utilities?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Sarah continued. "Look, babe, if we're going to have a future together, you need to be independent. You need your own space." "I can't keep coming over to your mom's house." "I know, and I'm going to. I'm working on it." "Working on what?" Another silence. "On selling this house." My heart stopped. "Selling the house?" Sarah asked. "Is it your house?" "Technically, it's my mom's, but my dad bought it, and I'm the only heir, so really it's mine." "Does your mom know you want to sell it?" "Not yet, but I don't think she'll care. She can just rent something smaller." "She's old. She doesn't need this much space." "And what are you going to do with the money?" "Buy a condo downtown near your work, invest some of it, start my business." "That sounds perfect, babe. It's about time you stood on your own 2 feet." They kissed. I heard the sound, and I stood there on the other side of the door, my soul shattered. My son was going to sell my house. He was going to leave me with nothing. And worst of all, he was doing it without guilt, as if I didn't matter, as if my years of sacrifice meant nothing. I went back to my room in silence. I closed the door. I sat on the bed, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry, because there was something stronger than sadness growing inside me, something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. That night, I pulled an old shoebox from my closet. It's where I kept important documents. I found the title deed to the house. It was in my name. Only my name. David and I had agreed on that from the beginning. He'd said, "If anything happens to me, I want everything in your name, so no one can ever take anything from you." Now I understood why. I also found my bank statements. I had some savings, not much, but something. And I had my monthly widow's pension. I could survive if I had to. I put everything back in the box and hid it in the back of my closet behind my winter coats. Then I lay down, and for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. Because even though I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, yet one thing was clear. I was not going to let my son rob me. I was not going to let him treat me like trash. I was not going to be invisible anymore. The next few days were strange. I kept up my routine, but inside something had shifted. I observed more. I listened more. I made mental notes of every single thing Michael did or said. One afternoon, while cleaning his room, I checked the envelope with the documents again. There were new papers, printouts of condos for sale downtown, all of them extremely expensive. None he could afford on his salary. He needed the money from my house. I also found printed text messages between him and Mr. Mendoza, the lawyer handling the transfer. Mr. Mendoza, any progress on the house I need to speed this up. My mom is getting older and gets confused sometimes. If she signs the papers soon, it's better. My mom is getting older and gets confused sometimes. That was his strategy. Make me look senile, incapable of making decisions, so no one would question why I was signing away everything I owned. My blood boiled, but I said nothing. I put everything back exactly as I found it, and I waited, because I had learned something in those months of pain and silence. Sometimes the best strategy is to let your enemy think he's already won, right before you take everything away. And that moment was getting closer. 3 weeks after I found those documents, something happened that changed everything. Michael went on a business trip to Chicago. He was going to be gone for 5 days. He told me on Monday morning while I was making coffee, "Mom, I'm heading to Chicago. I'll be back Friday." "A work trip?" "Yeah, a conference. I left my bags in my room. Can you bring them down to the car?" He didn't ask. He ordered. "Of course," I replied. He left without a goodbye, without a hug, without a "take care, Mom." He just left. I was alone in that house, which suddenly felt too big and too quiet. For the first few hours, I went about my normal routine. I cleaned the kitchen, watered the garden, put a load of laundry in, but around noon, something in me shifted. I was standing in front of Michael's closed bedroom door, mop in hand, and I thought, there has to be more. There has to be something I haven't seen. I opened the door slowly, as if someone could hear me. I went in. His room was a mess as usual. Clothes on the floor bed, unmade dirty glasses on the nightstand. But this time, I wasn't there to clean. I was there to find the truth. I started with his desk. I opened the drawers one by one. I found invoices, receipts from expensive restaurants, concert tickets, all paid for with my credit cards. In the second drawer, I found a black folder. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were more legal documents, but these were different. They were loan agreements, 5 different loans, all in my name. Personal loan, Bank of America. Account holder Emily Thompson. Amount $15,000. Personal loan, Chase Bank. Account holder Emily Thompson. Amount $20,000. I kept reading. The 5 loans totaled over $80,000. $80,000 that I had never asked for. $80,000 that someone had taken out using my name, my signature, my identity. And that someone was my son. I checked the dates. The oldest was from 6 months ago, the most recent from 2 weeks ago. They all had copies of my driver's license. They all had documents with a signature that looked like mine, but I knew it wasn't. I felt my legs tremble. I sat down in his desk chair trying to breathe. How had he done this? How had he forged my signature? How had he taken out all these loans without me knowing? And then I understood. The banks must have sent notifications, emails, phone calls. But Michael always got to the mail first. He checked the mailbox before I did. He answered the house phone when it rang. He had been intercepting all the information. He had been hiding my own financial life from me. I kept searching. At the back of the drawer, I found another envelope with more papers. I took them out. They were statements from a bank I didn't recognize. An investment account in the name of Michael Thompson Entrepreneur Fund. The numbers made me dizzy. There were transactions for tens of thousands of dollars, deposits, withdrawals, transfers. On the last page, I saw a handwritten note. Initial investment $60,000 loans, CT. Projected investment post-house sale $800,000. Expected ROI 30% annually. CT Clara Thompson. Me. My son had used my name, my credit, my identity to get loans he would never pay back. And now he was planning to sell my house to finance his entrepreneurial business. I put everything back in the black folder exactly as I found it. I kept looking. In his closet, behind a row of expensive shoes I had never seen him wear, I found a Nike shoebox. I opened it expecting to find sneakers, but there were no sneakers. There was money. Stacks and stacks of 50s and 100s held together with rubber bands. I counted quickly. There was at least $10,000 in cash. Where did all this money come from? I kept looking. Under his bed, I found a black backpack. I opened it. Inside was a laptop I had never seen before. I took it out and turned it on. It didn't have a password. The screen lit up showing the desktop. It was full of files with names like Project ETF, Investments 2024, Contacts, and Investors. I opened one at random. It was a business plan, 50 pages describing an innovative fintech startup that Michael was supposedly developing. I read the executive summary. Michael Thompson Capital is an investment firm specializing in emerging technology for the U.S. market with an initial capital of $8 million. $8 million, no $800,000. I kept reading. The document was full of terms I didn't understand. Blockchain fintech venture capital seed investment. But there was one section I understood perfectly. It was called Initial Capital Structure. Funding sources sale of family real estate asset, $800,000. Bank loans under family member's name, $80,000. Personal capital, $5,000. Family real estate asset. My house, family member. Me. My son had planned all of this. It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a mistake. It was a detailed, calculated, cold plan. And I was just a tool, a way to get money. I closed the laptop and put it back in the backpack exactly as I found it. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I left his room and walked down the stairs, slowly holding onto the railing. I reached the living room and collapsed onto the sofa. For hours, I just sat there staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything I had discovered. My son was a thief, a con artist, a liar, and I had been his perfect victim, the trusting mother who never questioned anything, who always believed in him, who always defended him. I got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen. I got a pitcher of iced tea from the fridge. I poured a glass and drank it in one gulp. I needed to think clearly. I needed a plan. Because now that I knew the whole truth, I couldn't keep acting like I knew nothing. But I couldn't confront him directly either. Not yet. Because if Michael realized I had discovered everything, he might speed up his plans. He might try to force me to sign papers. He might become dangerous. No, I needed to be smart, patient, strategic. I went to my room and got my phone. I Googled how to protect property from fraud. I read for hours, legal articles, forums, government websites. I learned that I could file a notice of lis pendens or a fraud alert with the county recorder's office. That would prevent anyone from selling my house without my explicit verified consent. I learned I could report the identity theft for the loans. I could request they be canceled because I never authorized them. I learned that I had rights, I had options. I was not helpless. The next day, Tuesday morning, I got dressed in my best clothes. A navy blue suit I had bought for my sister's funeral 3 years ago. I put on makeup, I fixed my hair, I looked in the mirror. I was no longer the broken woman crying in her room. I was Emily Thompson, 60 years old, widow, mother, and nobody, not even my own son, was going to steal what was mine. I grabbed my purse and left the house. My first stop was the bank. The Bank of America, where we'd had our family account for 20 years. I asked the bank representative to review all my financial products. Mrs. Thompson, I see you have a checking account, a savings account, 2 credit cards, and, oh yes, a personal loan you took out 4 months ago. A personal loan. Yes, for $15,000. Don't you remember? No, I never took out that loan. The woman frowned. I have the application here with your signature, ma'am. May I see it? She handed me a copy. There was my name, my address, my social security info, and a signature that looked like mine, but definitely was not. I want to report this as fraud, I said, my voice firm. The representative got nervous. Ma'am, this is very serious. We would need to open an investigation. Do you have any idea who might have done this? I hesitated for a moment. Telling the truth meant admitting my son was a criminal. It meant destroying our relationship forever. It meant everyone would know my shame. But staying silent meant losing everything. Yes, I said finally. I know who it was. Who? My son. The woman's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly composed herself and took notes. I understand. This is more common than you think, ma'am. We need you to file a formal complaint. I'll get you the forms and guide you through the process. I spent 2 hours at that bank. I filled out forms, gave statements, signed documents. When I left, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. My second stop was the county recorder's office. I asked for advice on how to protect my home. A young clerk helped me. I explained the situation without giving too many details. I just said I wanted to make sure no one could sell my property without my explicit authorization. You can file a fraud alert on your title, he explained. It prevents any transaction without you being physically present with official identification. It takes a few days to process, but once it's registered, your property is protected. What if someone has already started the sale process? Are there pending transactions? I don't know. Can you check? The clerk typed on his computer. Let me see. No, Mrs. Thompson. There are no pending transactions on your property. It's clean. I breathed a sigh of relief. I still had time. I want to file that alert, right now. Perfect. I'll need your ID, your title deed, and for you to fill out these forms. I spent another hour there. When I finished, I had a receipt in my hand that said, Fraud Alert Registered. Date, current date. Expiration indefinite until lifted by owner. My house was safe. No one could sell it without me being there, not even Michael. I got home late in the afternoon. I was exhausted physically and emotionally, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my life. That night, as I was making dinner just for myself, my phone rang. It was Michael. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello. Mom, how are you? His voice sounded normal, casual, as if he cared. I'm fine, son. And you? Good. The conference is interesting. Hey, have you gotten any calls from the bank? My blood ran cold. From the bank, which one? I don't know any of them. I think I missed a payment on a card, and sometimes they call the house. He was lying. I knew it, because now I knew the truth. No, I haven't gotten any calls. Oh, perfect. If they do call, just don't answer okay. They're super annoying. All right, son. Hey, Mom. Yes. Are you? Okay. You sound weird. For a second, I was tempted to tell him everything, to scream that I knew what he had done, that I knew he was robbing me. But I held back. I'm fine, Michael. Just tired. Okay? Well, I'll let you go. I'll call you in a few days. Take care. He hung up without waiting for a reply. I stood there with the phone in my hand, staring at the black screen. And then for the first time I smiled, because Michael didn't know that I knew. He didn't know I had protected my house. He didn't know I had reported his fraud. He didn't know his perfect plan was falling apart. And when he came back from Chicago, he was going to find a very different mother. A mother who was no longer afraid. A mother who would no longer be silent. Because I had discovered something important in those hours of pain and searching. When you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous. And Michael was about to find out exactly how dangerous his mother could be. Michael returned from Chicago on Friday night. I was in the living room reading a book when I heard his key in the door. He came in dragging his suitcase, his hair a mess, dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired. Hey, Mom, he said without looking at me. Hello, son. How was the trip? Fine, productive. He left his suitcase at the foot of the stairs and went straight to the kitchen. I heard him open the fridge, pour some water, close the door. He came back to the living room glass in hand. Did anything happen while I was gone? My heart beat faster, but my voice came out calm, controlled. No, everything's normal. You sure no one from the bank came by? No weird letters? No, Michael. Why do you ask? He shrugged. No reason, just curious. He took a sip of water and went up to his room. I stayed there, book in hand, feeling the adrenaline rush through me. He still didn't know. The next few days were strange. I kept my normal routine on the outside, but inside, I was a different person. Every morning, I woke up with a purpose. Every night, I went to bed knowing I was one step closer to the final truth. On Tuesday, I got a call from the bank. It was the representative who had helped me. Mrs. Thompson, I'm calling to inform you that the bank has accepted your fraud report. We are canceling the $15,000 loan. You will not have to pay anything. We've also started an internal investigation. And what happens to the person who committed the fraud? There was a pause. If you decide to file a criminal complaint, the bank will support you with all the necessary evidence. But that decision is yours, ma'am. I understand. Thank you. I hung up my hands shaking. Filing a criminal complaint against Michael meant he could go to jail. It meant destroying his life. It meant admitting to the world that my son was a criminal. Could I do that? Could a mother do that? I didn't have the answer yet. On Wednesday, Sarah came to the house. She arrived at noon in an Uber carrying shopping bags from expensive stores. Michael wasn't there. He had gone to work. She rang the doorbell. I opened it. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson. Is Michael here?" "No, he went out. He didn't say when he'd be back." "Oh, how annoying. He told me I could come over." "Well, can I wait for him inside?" I wanted to say no, that this was my house, and she had no right to just walk in whenever she wanted, but I held back. "Come in." She entered as if she owned the place, dropped her bags in the living room, took off her shoes, flopped onto the sofa. "Can you get me some water, Mrs. Thompson?" That word, get me. It wasn't a question. It was an order disguised as politeness. I went to the kitchen. I got a bottle of water from the fridge. I brought it to her. "Thanks," she said without looking at me, her eyes glued to her phone. I sat in the armchair across from her. I picked up my book. I pretended to read, but I was really watching her. Sarah was pretty young and sure of herself. She wore designer clothes. Her purse was an authentic Louis Vuitton that cost more than my pension for 3 months. Her nails were perfect. Her hair was fresh from the salon. She represented everything Michael wanted to be. Successful, glamorous, part of a world I didn't understand. After a few minutes, she looked up at me. "Mrs. Thompson, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you ever thought about moving somewhere smaller? I mean, this house is huge for just one person." My blood boiled, but my voice came out calm. "I'm not alone. I live with my son." "Yeah, but Michael's an adult. Sooner or later he's going to leave and you'll be here all alone in this huge house. Doesn't that scare you?" "No, this is my home. I bought it with my husband many years ago. It has memories. It has history." Sarah made a face. "Memories don't pay the electric bill, ma'am. Or the water or the upkeep. A house like this must cost a lot to maintain." "I manage." Well, I'm just saying it would be more practical to sell and buy something smaller, more modern. And with the money left over, you could invest it. Make your money grow." Now I understood. Sarah wasn't making casual conversation. She was testing the waters. Trying to convince me that selling my house was a good idea. Michael had sent her. "Sarah," I said, looking her directly in the eyes, "I know you and Michael have plans. I know you want me to sell this house." She turned pale. "What? No, ma'am, Don't pretend. I heard your conversation weeks ago. I know everything." She fell silent. For the first time since I'd met her, she didn't know what to say. "And I want you to tell Michael something for me," I continued. "This house is not for sale. It's never going to be. And if he tries to sell it without my permission, he's going to be in very serious trouble." Sarah shot up from the sofa. She grabbed her bags. "I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. I just came to see Michael." "Of course, and you can leave now. You don't need to wait for him." She stormed out of the house without a goodbye. I locked the door behind her and leaned against the wood. My hands were shaking, but I was also smiling, because I had just done something I had never done before. I had defended myself. That night, Michael came home furious. He stormed up the stairs and burst into my room without knocking. "What did you say to Sarah?" I was sitting on my bed reading. "Good evening, Michael." "What did you say to her?" "She's crying. She said you kicked her out." "I didn't kick her out. I told her she could leave if she wanted to." "Why?" "Because she was uncomfortable with the conversation we were having." "What conversation?" I looked him straight in the eye. "About my plans to sell this house. Or rather about your plans for me to sell this house." He froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Mom Sarah's just confused. Michael, stop." My voice was louder than I expected. He stopped talking. I got off the bed and walked toward him. "I know you want to sell my house. I know you took out loans in my name. I know you have a business plan that uses my property as your starting capital. I know everything." The look on his face changed, from anger to surprise, then to fear, then to something darker. "You went through my things. I live here, Michael. It's my house. That doesn't give you the right to snoop in my room, and you don't have the right to steal from me." The word hung in the air like a knife. "Steal." Michael clenched his jaw. "I'm not stealing from you. It's family money. It's my inheritance. It's your inheritance when I die. As long as I'm alive, all of this is mine. Dad worked for this house too, and Dad left it to me because he trusted me to know what to do with it. And what are you going to do? Just sit here until you die alone and forgotten?" His words hurt, but they didn't break me anymore. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll sell it someday. But it will be my decision, not yours. I'm your son, your only son. Everything you have should be mine. Everything I had I gave to you for 35 years. I gave you food, shelter, education, love. I gave you everything I possibly could and more. And you know what I got in return?" He stayed quiet. "Contempt, humiliation, theft, lies." "Don't exaggerate, Mom." "Exaggerate, you called me useless in front of 80 people. You threw away my gift like it was trash. You forged my signature to get loans I never authorized. You planned to sell my house without telling me. Which part of that is an exaggeration?" Michael walked to the door. He paused before leaving. "You know what your problem is, Mom. You never let me grow up. You always wanted me here under control, depending on you. Because if I left, you'd be alone, and that terrified you." "You're right," I said. "I was terrified of being alone. That's why I put up with everything you did. That's why I stayed quiet when you hurt me. Because I preferred having you here, even treating me badly over losing you." He looked at me surprised. "But I'm not afraid anymore, Michael, because I realize something. I am already alone. I have been alone for years, because the son I loved, that little boy who hugged me in the garden and promised to take care of me, that boy died a long time ago, and in his place is a man I don't recognize." He just stood in the doorway, not knowing what to say. "I already reported the loans as fraud," I continued. "The bank is canceling them, and I filed an alert with the county recorder. No one can sell this house without me being physically present. Not even you." His face turned red with rage. "You did what—" "I protected what is mine. You're a selfish old woman." "I need that money." "For what? For your business that doesn't even exist, to impress Sarah, to keep living a life you can't afford. It's my future, and this is my life." We stared at each other. Two strangers, two enemies. He was the first to break the silence. "You know what I'm leaving. I don't want to be in this house another minute." "Perfect. The door is open." "And I'm not coming back." "Also perfect." I waited for him to leave. I waited for him to go to his room, pack his bags, and storm out. But he didn't. He just stood there breathing hard. And then he said something I didn't expect. "Are you really going to let me go?" His voice sounded different, smaller, more vulnerable. For a split second, I saw the boy he used to be, the boy who was afraid of being alone. And a part of me wanted to hug him, to tell him it would all be okay, that I forgave him, that we could start over. But then I remembered everything. The insult at his birthday, the fraudulent loans, his cruel words, his plan to leave me with nothing. And I understood that I couldn't save him. He had to save himself. "Yes," I said finally, "I am going to let you go." Something in his eyes changed, a mix of sadness, anger, and resignation. "Fine," he said. "I'll get my things tomorrow." He left my room and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed and let the tears come. Because even though I knew I was doing the right thing, even though I knew I couldn't keep being a victim, it hurt. It hurt to let go of the boy I loved with all my heart. It hurt to accept that the man he became no longer loved me. It hurt to understand that sometimes a mother's love isn't enough to save a child from himself. I cried for hours, and when I had no tears left, I got up, washed my face, and looked in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen, my hair a mess, my face tired. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw a woman who had decided she would never be a victim again. The next morning, Michael came down with 3 large suitcases. I was in the kitchen making coffee. We didn't speak. He carried the suitcases to his car. He made 3 trips. He never looked at me. When he was finished, he came inside one last time. He stood at the entrance to the kitchen. "Mom," I looked at him waiting. "I'm going to get that money another way. I'm going to build my business. And when I'm successful, you're going to regret not supporting me." It wasn't an apology. It was a threat. "I hope you make it, Michael," I said, and I meant it. "I really do, but not at my expense." He didn't reply. He grabbed my car keys from the counter. "The keys?" I said, holding out my hand. "What, that car is mine." "The keys, please." He thought about it for a moment. Then he dropped them on the counter with a loud clack. He also took the credit cards in my name out of his wallet. "Here. I don't need them anymore." He left them next to the keys, and he left. I heard his car engine start. I heard the automatic garage door open. I heard him drive away, and then silence. A deep, complete, absolute silence. I stood in the kitchen surrounded by that silence, feeling my life change forever. My son was gone, and even though it hurt, even though I felt like a part of me had broken, I also felt something else. Relief. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What about you? What would you have done in my place? The first few days after Michael left were the strangest of my life. The house was silent, a silence I had never experienced. There was no loud music at 3 a.m, no slamming doors, no voices arguing on the phone, no clothes thrown in the hallway, just silence, and me. The first few mornings I woke up at 6 out of habit. I made coffee for 2, and then I remembered I was alone, that I didn't have to make anyone's breakfast, that I didn't have to wash anyone's clothes, that I didn't have to tiptoe around. I was free, but freedom felt strange, empty, heavy. On Saturday, a week after Michael left, I was watering the gardenias when the doorbell rang. I dried my hands on my apron and went to open it. It was Sarah. She was wearing dark sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Her face looked pale, like she hadn't slept in days. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice shaking. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. "What do you need, Sarah? I need to talk to you, please, just 5 minutes." Something in her voice made me open the door. We went into the living room. She sat on the edge of the sofa, nervously twisting her hands. I sat across from her and waited. "I don't know how to start," she finally said. "The beginning usually works." She took a deep breath. "Michael and I broke up." I wasn't surprised. "When? 3 days ago. I knew he was difficult, but I didn't know he was stealing from you. I didn't know about the loans. I didn't know he wanted to sell your house without your permission." "You really didn't know." She looked me in the eye for the first time. "I swear I didn't. I thought the house was partly his, that it was his inheritance. He told me you had both agreed to sell it." He lied. "I know. And when I found out the truth, I realized who he really was." She pulled a tissue from her purse and wiped her eyes under the sunglasses. "After I left your house that day, I went to find him. I asked him what was going on. And he told me you were old, that you were confused, that you didn't understand modern business." "Of course. But something didn't feel right. So I did some research. I talked to friends who work at banks. I asked them to check a few things. And I found out Michael is drowning in debt. Maxed out credit cards, personal loans. He hasn't paid money he owes at restaurants, bars, clubs. How much? Over $100,000. I couldn't breathe. 100,000? Yes, and all that money he was supposedly investing in his business. There is no business, Mrs. Thompson. There are only debts, expensive vacations, designer clothes, and parties. He was living a life he couldn't afford. And when his own credit ran out, he decided to use yours, and then your house." I leaned back on the sofa, trying to process it. My son wasn't just a thief. He was a compulsive liar, a con artist, a man living a fantasy while sinking in debt. Why are you telling me this, Sarah? She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and swollen. Because when I confronted him, when I told him that what he was doing to you was wrong, he said something horrible. What did he say? He said, "My mom is old. What has she got left? 10 years. Maybe less. Why does she need a house that big? It's better if I use it now while I'm young. I have plans. I have a future. She's already lived her life." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. When I heard that, Sarah continued, I realized I didn't know him at all. That the man I fell in love with didn't exist. He was just a mask, and underneath was someone cold, calculating, capable of destroying his own mother for money. Tears ran down her cheeks. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Thompson. I'm sorry I treated you badly. I'm sorry I was part of this without knowing. I'm sorry I believed him." I looked at her for a long moment. I could have hated her. I could have screamed at her to get out of my house and never come back. But I didn't, because I saw in her what I had been for years, someone who loved Michael and who was betrayed by that love. "I believe you," I said finally. "Really?" "Yes, because I also fell for his lies for 35 years. You're not the only one." Sarah stood up from the sofa. "I came to tell you something else. Michael looked for me yesterday. He asked to borrow money, $5,000. He said it was urgent, that he had a business opportunity he couldn't pass up. And you gave it to him." "No. I told him I didn't have that kind of money, but I'm sure he's going to keep looking for people to loan him money. He's going to keep scamming." "I know. Are you going to report him?" It was the question I had asked myself 1,000 times over the last few days. "I don't know yet." Sarah walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned. "Mrs. Thompson, you deserve better than this. You deserve peace. You deserve to rest. Don't let him take that from you." And she left. I sat in the living room for hours thinking about her words. She's already lived her life. That's what Michael had said, as if my life was over, as if I no longer had a right to my own things, as if just because I was older, because I was his mother, I should sacrifice myself so he could have whatever he wanted. But I was 60, not 80, not 90, 60. I could live another 20 years. 30 if I was lucky. And weren't those years worth anything? Didn't they deserve to be lived with dignity, with my own resources in my own home? For the first time, I felt rage. Not sadness, not pain, pure rage. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned until 3 in the morning. Finally, I got up. I put on my robe and went down to the kitchen. I made chamomile tea. I sat at the dining table with the hot mug in my hands. And then I saw my cell phone on the table. I picked it up. I looked for my sister Linda's number. Linda lived in Chicago. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. We had grown distant after a stupid argument about our mother's inheritance. But in that moment, I needed to talk to someone in my family, someone who knew me before I was just Michael's mom. I dialed. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sleepy. "Hello?" "Linda, it's Emily." Silence. "Emily, what happened? Are you okay?" "It's 3 in the morning." "Yes." "No, I don't know." "What's wrong?" "You're scaring me." And then, without planning it, without thinking, I let it all out. I told her about Michael's birthday, about the fraudulent loans, about the plan to sell my house, about Sarah, about everything. I talked for half an hour without stopping. Linda didn't interrupt me once. She just listened. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then I heard her voice firm and clear. "Emily, you need to report him." "But he's my son." "He's a criminal, Linda." "No, listen to me. I know you love him. I know he's your son. But what he did to you is a crime. And if you don't stop him now, he's going to keep doing it. He'll find other people to rob, other mothers, other Sarahs. But if I report him, he could go to jail. And that would be his fault, not yours. You didn't put a gun to his head and force him to forge your signature. You didn't force him to take out loans in your name. He made those decisions. He has to face the consequences. My eyes filled with tears. I'm scared, Linda. I know, sis, but you have to be strong. For you, for your future, for all the women who have been betrayed by their own children and stayed silent out of fear. I took a deep breath. What if I regret it? What if you don't, and he comes back in 6 months to try again? What if next time he succeeds in stealing your house? What if you end up on the street? She was right. Think about it, Linda continued. Get some sleep. And tomorrow, if you decide to report him, I'll fly out there. You're not going to be alone in this. I promise. Thank you, Linda. I love you, sis. I've always loved you, even if we haven't talked. I love you too. We hung up. I finished my cold tea and went up to my room. This time, I was able to sleep. The next day, Monday, I woke up early. I got dressed in my navy blue suit. I put on makeup. I fixed my hair. I looked in the mirror. I was no longer the broken woman crying in her room. I was Emily Thompson, and I had a decision to make. I grabbed my purse and left the house. My destination was the district attorney's office. The ride took 40 minutes. The whole way my heart was racing. My mind was screaming at me to go back, not to do it, that he was my son, but I also remembered his words. She's already lived her life. I remembered him calling me useless. I remembered his plan to leave me on the street, and I kept going. I arrived at the office. It was a gray, cold building full of sad people waiting their turn. I got in line. When it was my turn, a middle-aged woman with glasses helped me. How can I help you, ma'am? I took a deep breath. I'm here to file a complaint for fraud and document forgery. Do you know who committed the crime? Another deep breath. Yes, my son. The woman looked up surprised, but quickly recovered and took notes. I understand. Can you give me the details? For 2 hours, I told her everything. I showed her the bank documents, the loan copies, the statements, everything. She wrote down every detail patiently. This is enough to open an investigation, she said finally. The DA's office will summon your son to give a statement. If the fraud is proven, he could face 3 to 9 years in prison. The words hit me like stones. 3 to 9 years. My son, in prison. Do you wish to proceed with the complaint? The woman asked. My hand was trembling on the desk. I thought about everything. About the boy he was, the man he became, his childhood laughter, his adult insults, the watch I gave him with love, the loans he took in my name, the promises he made, the betrayal he planned. And then I thought about me, about my 60 years, about my years left to live, about my house, about my dignity, about my right to exist without being destroyed. Yes, I said finally, I want to proceed. The woman handed me the papers. I signed them one by one with a shaky but firm hand. When I left the office, it was 2 p.m. The sun was shining. The city was moving at its normal pace. People were walking down the street not knowing that I had just done the hardest thing of my life. I had just reported my own son. I sat on a park bench across the street, and I cried. I cried for everything I had lost. I cried for everything I would never get back. I cried for the boy I loved who no longer existed. But I also cried with relief, because I had finally stopped being a victim. I had finally defended myself. I had finally said no. This is not okay, and I will not allow it. My phone rang. It was Linda. Did you do it? Yes. How do you feel? I don't know. Broken, but also liberated. That's normal. You did the right thing, Emily. The hard thing, but the right thing. You think so? I'm sure of it. We were silent for a moment. I'll be there tomorrow afternoon, Linda said. I'm going to stay with you for a few days. I don't want you to be alone. Thank you, sis. That's what we're for. That night back in my house, I walked through all the rooms. I went into Michael's room. It was empty except for some furniture. It didn't smell like his cologne anymore. There were no clothes on the floor. There was no trace of him. I sat on his empty bed, and for the first time in months I didn't feel pain being there. I felt peace, a strange, sad peace, but it was real, because even though I had lost my son, even though our relationship would probably never be repaired, even though I would face difficult months of legal and emotional stress, I had won something more important. I had won myself back. I had reclaimed my voice, my dignity, my life. And no one, not even my own son, was ever going to take it from me again. Linda arrived the next day on a noon flight. I went to pick her up at the airport. When I saw her walk out of the arrivals gate with her small suitcase, I realized how much I had missed her. We hugged for a long time. She smelled like the same floral perfume she'd worn since we were girls. Her hug was strong, protective, like an older sister's, even though I was 2 years older. "I'm here," she whispered in my ear, and with just those 2 words, I felt less alone. On the way home, Linda didn't ask many questions. She just put her hand on mine while I drove and let me be. When we arrived, I showed her the house. It had been years since she'd visited, since David's funeral to be exact. "It looks the same," she said, looking at the living room. "I can still see David sitting in that armchair reading the paper." "Me too, and I can see Michael as a little boy running down those stairs." Her voice broke a little when she said his name. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I'm sorry you had to go through this." "Me too." I set her up in the guest room. That night we ate dinner together in the kitchen. I made chili, Linda's favorite dish since we were kids. While we ate, she told me about her life, about her husband, her 3 grown children, her job as an elementary school teacher, about how quiet Chicago was compared to the city. She didn't mention Michael. She didn't mention the complaint. She just talked about normal, everyday, comforting things. And I needed that. I needed to remember that life went on, that there was more to life than pain. On the 3rd day of Linda's visit, a summons from the DA's office arrived. An officer delivered it. The envelope was white official, with stamps and signatures. I opened it with trembling hands. Summons, Reinvestigation File 2574-2024. Emily Thompson is hereby summoned to appear on Friday, October 18th at 10:00 a.m. to ratify her complaint and provide additional testimony. Linda read the document over my shoulder. "Do you want me to go with you? Can you? That's why I'm here." Friday arrived faster than I expected. Linda and I dressed formally, me in my navy suit, her in a gray dress and a black blazer. We looked like lawyers, or maybe just 2 women trying to look stronger than they felt. We got to the office at 9:30. They called us in at 10 sharp. The assistant district attorney was a man in his 40s with glasses and a tie. He looked tired but professional. "Mrs. Thompson, good morning. I'm Mr. Perez. I'll be handling your case." "Good morning. This is my sister Linda," I said, gesturing to her. "Can she stay with me?" "Of course." We sat across from his desk. "All right, ma'am. I've reviewed your complaint and the documents you provided. I have to tell you, you have a solid case. The forged signatures are obvious. The banks have already confirmed you did not request those loans, and the attempted property transfer without your consent is documented. What's next? We are going to summon your son to give a statement. If he accepts the charges, there can be a restitution agreement. If not, the case goes to trial. Does a restitution agreement mean he doesn't go to prison? It depends. In cases of fraud between family members, especially when the accused is the victim's son, judges tend to be more flexible. But he would have to return all the money, pay a fine, and possibly serve community service or probation. And if it goes to trial, if his guilt is proven, and with the evidence we have, it's almost certain, he could face 3 to 9 years of active prison time. The words hung in the air. "How much time do I have to decide if I want to keep going?" I asked. The agent looked at me surprised. "Ma'am, you already filed the complaint. The process has begun. The only way to stop it is to withdraw the complaint, and you can only do that before your son is formally charged. Once we summon him and he gives his statement, the process continues even if you want to withdraw." I felt the air leave my lungs. "When will you summon him?" "This week, probably in the next 3 days." 3 days. I only had 3 days to decide if I really wanted my son to face the consequences of what he did. We left the office in silence. Linda drove home because I couldn't. My hands were shaking too much. When we got to the house, I collapsed on the sofa. "I can't do this to him," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't send him to prison." Linda sat next to me. "Emily, look at me." I looked up. "What did Michael do when he robbed you? Did he think about you? Did he worry about what would happen to you?" "No." "And when he planned to sell your house and leave you with nothing, did he think about where you would live?" "No." "And when he called you useless in front of 80 people, did he care how you felt?" "No." "Then why do you have to protect him now?" "Because I'm his mother." "Exactly. You're his mother. You're not his accomplice. You're not his enabler. You're his mother." And sometimes being a mother means letting our children face the consequences of their actions, even when it hurts, even when it destroys us, because that is the only way they can learn. And what if he doesn't learn? What if he just hates me more? Then that will be his decision, but at least you will know you did the right thing, that you didn't let him continue to destroy you, that you didn't let him continue to destroy himself. I was quiet for a long time. Linda was right, but the heart doesn't understand reason. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned until 4 a.m. Finally, I got up, put on my robe, and went to the kitchen. I got a pitcher of water from the fridge. I poured a glass, and then I saw the envelope with the summons on the dining table. I picked it up. I read it again. And then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I prayed. I wasn't a very religious person. David and I went to church on Christmas and Easter. But that was it. But that night, I needed something bigger than myself, something to tell me what to do. I closed my eyes and spoke softly. "God, if you're there, if you can hear me, I need help. I need to know if what I'm doing is right. I need a sign, because I'm lost and I'm scared and I don't know if I can live with this decision." I waited. The silence of the house was my only answer. But then, in that silence, I heard something. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't anything mystical. It was a memory. David's voice. We were in this same dining room 12 years ago when Michael had failed a semester of college. I wanted to talk to his professors, fix things, find a solution. And David told me, "Emily, honey, you have to let him fall. You have to let him hit the ground. Because if you always catch him before he lands, he'll never learn to pick himself up." "But he's my son," I'd replied. "That's exactly why. Because we love him. We have to let him learn." And I opened my eyes. David was always wiser than me. He knew that protecting Michael from everything wasn't love. It was weakness disguised as love. And I had spent 35 years confusing the two. I went back to my room. This time, I slept. The next day, Saturday, my phone rang at 11 a.m. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello." "Mom." It was Michael. My heart stopped. "Michael." "Yeah, it's me. I'm calling from a friend's phone. Mine ran out of minutes." Of course, with no money, he couldn't even pay his phone bill. "What do you need?" There was a long pause. "I need to talk to you." "We're talking." "No, in person. Can I come to the house?" I hesitated. Linda looked at me from the living room, shaking her head. "No, don't let him come." But something in his voice sounded different, less arrogant, more vulnerable. "What do you want to come for, to apologize?" The words took me by surprise. "Apologize?" "Yes, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, and I want to ask for your forgiveness. And also, I need to tell you something important." "What is it?" "I can't tell you over the phone. Please, Mom, give me a chance." Linda was still shaking her head, mouthing no. But I thought if I don't let him come, I'll always wonder what he wanted to say. I'll always wonder if I missed the last chance to fix things. "All right," I said finally. "You can come, but my sister Linda is here, and she will be present for the conversation." "That's fine. I'm on my way. Thank you, Mom." He hung up. Linda looked at me with worry. "Emily, are you sure about this?" "No, but I need to hear him out." "What if he's coming to manipulate you? What if he's coming to convince you to drop the complaint?" Then it won't work, because I've already made my decision. Which decision? I looked her in the eye. I'm moving forward. I'm letting the legal process continue. Because you were right, because David was right. The only way Michael will learn is by facing the consequences. Linda hugged me. I'm proud of you, sis. Michael arrived an hour later. He rang the doorbell. I opened it. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair a mess. He no longer looked like the successful, arrogant man he had been. He looked broken. Hi, Mom. Hello, Michael. Come in. He walked in slowly, his head down. Linda was in the living room, standing arms crossed. Her presence was a silent reminder that I was not alone. Aunt Linda, Michael said in a low voice. Michael. We sat down, Michael in an armchair, Linda and I on the sofa together. There was an uncomfortable silence. Finally, Michael spoke. Mom, I came to tell you I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything I did. I'm sorry I stole from you. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I treated you like trash. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry I called you useless that day. I'm sorry I threw away your gift. I'm sorry I planned to sell your house. I'm sorry for all of it. I waited. I said nothing. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he continued. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I get it. I finally understand. What do you understand? I asked, my voice calm. That I destroyed you. That I took everything you gave me and used it against you. That I was the worst son in the world. Tears ran down his cheeks. Sarah was right. You were right. Everyone was right but me. I was blind. Blinded by ambition, by appearances, by wanting to be someone I'm not. And now I have nothing. I lost my job. I lost Sarah. I lost my apartment because I couldn't pay the rent. I lost everything. And I realized the only thing that ever had any real value was the one thing that was always there. You. I bit my lip to keep from crying, but I lost it. I lost you. And I understand. I understand if you never forgive me. I understand if you want me to leave and never come back. I get it. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry, and that I love you. I always loved you, even when I didn't show it, even when I made you feel the opposite. I love you, Mom. The silence that followed was dense, heavy. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that I forgave him, that we could start over. But then I remembered David's words. You have to let him fall. And Linda's words. You have to let him face the consequences. I took a deep breath. Michael, I said finally, I love you too. I will always love you. Because you are my son. That will never change. I saw hope in his eyes, but I continued. But love doesn't mean letting you destroy me. Love doesn't mean being an accomplice to your mistakes. Love doesn't mean sacrificing myself so you can be comfortable. The hope in his eyes began to fade. I filed a complaint against you, I said firmly, for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. The DA's office will be summoning you in the next few days. He turned pale. What? You have to face the consequences of what you did. But I'm apologizing. I'm telling you I was wrong. I know, and I believe you. But an apology doesn't erase the actions. It doesn't erase the fraud. It doesn't erase the loans you took out in my name. It doesn't erase the damage you caused. Mom, please. If you reported me, I could go to jail. I know. And you don't care. Yes, I care. It breaks my heart. But I care more about teaching you that actions have consequences, that you can't destroy people and get away with it just because you're my son. Michael stood up. He walked toward me. He knelt in front of me. Mom, please, I am begging you. Drop the complaint. I'll pay you back. Everything. I swear. I'll get a job. I'll change. But please, don't let them send me to prison. He put his head in my lap like he did when he was a little boy, and my heart broke into 1,000 pieces because I wanted to protect him. I wanted to save him. I wanted to say, yes, I'll drop everything, I'll give you another chance. But then I felt Linda's hand on my shoulder, and I remembered why I was doing this. Not for revenge, not for hate, for love. Because loving him meant letting him learn. Loving him meant not being his eternal safety net. Loving him meant letting him hit the ground so he could learn to get up. I put my hand on his head. I stroked his hair just like when he was little. "Michael," I said, my voice soft but firm, "I am not dropping the complaint." He lifted his head. His eyes were red, desperate. "But I will be there when you get out," I continued. "I will visit you if you go to prison. I will write you letters. I will pray for you. And when you serve your time, if you have truly changed, if you have learned, I will help you rebuild your life." "Why?" he asked in a broken voice. "Because I am your mother, and mothers don't abandon their children, but they don't let them destroy them either." Michael stood up slowly. We looked at each other for a long moment, and in that moment something changed between us. We were no longer the submissive mother and the abusive son. We were two broken people trying to find a way to heal. "I understand," he said finally. "You do." "Yes, I think this is what I need. I think if you save me from this, I'll never learn. I'll never change." I nodded. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, son." He walked to the door. Before he left, he turned. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For loving me enough to let me fall." And he left. When the door closed, I collapsed on the sofa. Linda held me while I cried. I cried for my son. I cried for me. I cried for everything we had lost, and for everything that maybe someday we could get back. But I also felt something else. Peace. A deep, real deserved peace. Because I had finally done the right thing. The hard thing. The painful thing. But the right thing. And even though the road ahead was going to be hard, even though the next few months would be an emotional hell, I knew I had made the right choice. Not just for me, for him too. Because sometimes the greatest love a mother can give is to say, "No, this is not okay, and I'm going to let you learn, even if it destroys me." 3 months after that last conversation with Michael, I got a call from Mr. Perez. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the garden pruning the gardenias when my phone rang. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm calling to inform you that your son has accepted a restitution agreement." My heart skipped a beat. What does that mean? It means he acknowledged the charges and agreed to the conditions set by the judge. He will not go to prison, but he will have to comply with certain obligations. I breathed relieved and terrified at the same time. What obligations? First, he must pay back all the money he fraudulently obtained. That's $80,000. The judge gave him 2 years to pay it in monthly installments of $300. I did the math. That was almost all the money Michael could earn in a normal job. Second, the agent continued, he must perform 500 hours of community service at a nursing home. The judge felt it was appropriate for him to learn to value the elderly. I couldn't help a bitter smile. There was poetic justice in that. Third, he now has a criminal record. He cannot leave the country without judicial authorization. And if he commits a similar crime in the next 5 years, a 6-year prison sentence will be automatically activated. I understand. Are you in agreement with this outcome, ma'am? I thought for a few seconds. Was it enough? No, it wasn't enough to repair all the damage, but it was fair. Yes, I said finally. I agree. Perfect. We will send you the official documents. Your son must begin payments next month. I hung up and sat on the garden bench for a long time. Michael wouldn't go to jail, but he hadn't gotten away with it either. He would have to pay. He would have to work. He would have to face the consequences of his actions for the next 2 years. And that's what I had wanted from the beginning. Not to destroy him, but to teach him. Linda had returned to Chicago 2 weeks after Michael's visit, but we talked on the phone every few days. When I told her about the agreement, she sighed with relief. Thank God he's not going to prison, but I'm glad he has to pay. Me too. How do you feel? Strange, relieved, sad, all at the same time. That's normal. You've been through a lot. Yes. Have you heard from him? Where is he living? No. I haven't heard from him since that day. And do you want to? The question surprised me. Did I want to know yes and no? A part of me wanted to make sure he was okay, that he had a place to sleep, that he was eating. But another part knew I needed space, that he needed space, that we both needed time to heal. I think it's better this way, I said finally. He knows where to find me when he's ready. 2 more months passed. Life began to feel different, lighter, more mine. Without Michael's presence, the house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a home again. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I went back to my painting class on Tuesday afternoons. I joined a book club at the local library. I invited friends over. Friends I had neglected for years because Michael always needed something. One afternoon while having coffee with Gloria, a friend from college, she said something that struck me. Emily, you look different. Different how? I don't know. More alive. Like you woke up after being asleep for a long time. I smiled. I think I did wake up. What happened? Did you meet someone? I laughed. No, just the opposite. I found myself. Gloria nodded, as if she understood perfectly. Sometimes we lose so much of ourselves taking care of others that we forget who we were. I'm glad you found yourself again. That night in the quiet of my home, I thought about her words. I had spent 35 years being Michael's mom. My entire identity was tied to him, to his well-being, his needs, his dreams. But what about me? What about Emily? For the first time in decades, I could ask that question without feeling guilty. One Saturday morning, 2 weeks later, I was in the kitchen making banana bread when the doorbell rang. I opened it without thinking. It was Michael. But not the Michael I had seen 5 months ago. This Michael was different. He had lost more weight, but he looked healthy. He was wearing simple jeans and a cotton shirt. No designer clothes, no expensive watch. Just normal clothes. His hair was shorter, combed back, and in his eyes there was something I hadn't seen in years. Humility. Hi, Mom. Michael, I didn't know you were coming. I'm sorry, I should have called. I wasn't sure if you'd answer. He was right. Come in, I said, stepping aside. He walked in slowly, looking at the house as if for the first time, as if he was seeing memories in every corner. Smells good? He said. Is that banana bread? Yes. Like the kind you used to make when I was a kid? The same. We sat in the living room. There was an awkward distance between us, like two strangers trying to remember how to talk to each other. I came to bring you this, he said, pulling an envelope from his backpack. It's the first payment. I took it. Inside was $300 in cash. You didn't have to bring it in person. You could have deposited it. I know. But I wanted to see you. I wanted to tell you how I've been. I nodded. I got a job, he said with something that sounded like pride. At a hardware store. It's not glamorous. I help customers stock shelves, make deliveries. But it's honest, and it pays enough to live. I'm glad. I'm living in a rented room in a cheaper neighborhood. It's small. I share a bathroom with 3 other tenants. But it's mine. I pay for it with my own money. Good. And I started my community service. I go to the St. Joseph's nursing home 3 times a week. At first I hated the idea. His voice broke a little. But I realized something. Those old folks in there, so many of them are there because their kids abandoned them, because their families decided they were a burden. And I almost did the same thing to you, Mom. Tears started to run down his cheeks. There's this one lady, Mrs. Gable. She's 82. She never gets visitors. Her 3 kids live in the city, but they don't come to see her. And she sits by the window every single day, just waiting for them. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. When I see her, I think of you. I think about how I treated you. I think about how I could have done that to you. Left you alone, forgotten, waiting. Michael, don't... Let me finish. I need to say this. I was a monster, Mom. A selfish, cruel monster, capable of destroying the one person who loved me most in the world. And I have no excuse. I can't blame anyone else. It was my decision, my actions, my responsibility. He took a deep breath. But I want you to know that I'm changing. For real. Not for the judge. Not for the agreement. For me. Because I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. And I decided to be different. There was a long silence. I know you don't expect me to believe you, he continued. I know words don't mean anything after everything I did. But I'm going to prove it to you, month after month, year after year, until someday, maybe, you can really forgive me. I looked him in the eyes, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years, sincerity. Michael, I said finally, I believe you, and I forgive you. His eyes widened in surprise. You do? Yes. I forgave you months ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. It means I'm choosing to let go of the resentment. It means I'm choosing not to carry your guilt. It means I'm choosing to move on with my life. I understand, and I'm glad you're changing. I'm glad you're working. I'm glad you're learning. But you're doing it for you, not for me, because I'm already okay. I said it firmly, and it was true. I was okay. For the first time in years, I was truly okay. I know, Michael said, and I'm glad. You look different, stronger, happier. I am. He stood up from the sofa. Well, I don't want to take up more of your time. I just wanted to bring you the payment, and see you. Thank you for coming. He walked to the door. Before he left, he turned. Mom. Yes. Do you think, someday, we could, I don't know, get a coffee, be a family again? I thought about it for a few seconds. Maybe. Someday. When we're both ready. That's fair. Michael. Yeah. I'm proud of you for working, for paying, for trying to change. Something in his face lit up. Thanks, Mom. That means everything to me. And he left. I stood at the door watching him walk down the street until he disappeared around the corner. He didn't have a car anymore. He was walking to the subway, and I realized something. That was good. Walking instead of driving my car, working in a hardware store instead of pretending to be an entrepreneur, living in a rented room instead of living for free in my house. All of it was good, because it was real, it was humble, it was honest, and maybe, just maybe, that humility would save him. The months kept passing. Michael kept up with his payments. They arrived on the 1st of every month, without fail. Sometimes he brought them in person. Sometimes he deposited them. When he came, we'd talk for a little while. He'd tell me about his job, about the people at the nursing home, about the small victories of his day. He was no longer the arrogant son bragging about cars and trips. He was a working man trying to rebuild his life from scratch. And I supported him, but from a distance, with clear boundaries, with love, but also with dignity. One day, 6 months after his first visit, he called me. Mom, can I come see you? I have something to tell you. Of course. When? This afternoon. Okay. He arrived at 4. He was holding a small box in his hands. What's that? I asked. Open it. I opened it curiously. Inside was the watch, the Longines I had given him for his birthday. The one he had thrown away like trash. I got it back, he said softly. I asked one of my old friends to find it. It was at a pawn shop. I had to pay 3 times its value to get it back, but I did. I took the watch out of the box. It was flawless. They had cleaned it, polished it. It looked brand new. And I want you to know, Michael continued, that I'm going to wear it every day. Not because it's expensive, not because it's a brand name, but because you gave it to me with love. And for a long time, I didn't know how to value that. But I do now. He rolled up his sleeve and showed me his wrist. He was wearing a cheap digital watch. When I finish paying everything I owe you, when I finish my 500 hours, when I feel like I deserve to wear it, that's the day I'll put on your watch, and it will be a reminder of what I lost and what I got back. I couldn't hold back my tears. Thank you, son. No, Mom, thank you for not giving up on me, for loving me enough to let me fall, and for being here waiting for me when I finally got up. We hugged. It wasn't a perfect hug. It wasn't like before. There was still distance, there was still pain, but it was real, and that was more valuable than anything. When he left that afternoon, I sat in the garden under the oak tree David had planted. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The gardenias were in bloom, bright and beautiful, and I was at peace, because I had learned something important on this painful journey. Justice isn't always immediate. Sometimes it takes months or years, but it comes. Karma isn't revenge, it's balance, it's learning. It's giving everyone what their actions deserve. And true love isn't blind sacrifice. It's love with boundaries. It's love with dignity. It's love that says, I love you, but I will not let you destroy me. Michael had wanted everything without working for any of it. And life had taken everything from him until he learned the value of things. He had despised my gift, and now he worked for months just to get it back. He had called me useless, and now he understood I was his only real safety net. He had planned to leave me alone, and now he knew what it felt like to be truly alone. Life has a funny way of teaching, not with sermons, not with cruel punishments, but with natural consequences that force us to look in the mirror and decide who we want to be. And I hoped with all my heart that Michael would choose to be someone better. But if he didn't, I was already okay, because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. You can't save anyone who doesn't want to be saved, but you can always save yourself. And that is enough. It's been 2 years since that night of Michael's birthday. 2 years since he called me useless in front of 80 people. 2 years since I discovered my own son was planning to steal my house. 2 years since I made the hardest decision of my life, to defend myself. Today is my 62nd birthday, and I'm sitting in my garden under the oak tree David planted so many years ago, watching the afternoon sun paint the sky with colors that have no name. The gardenias are more beautiful than ever. I've cared for them with patience, with love, knowing that beautiful things take time and dedication, just like healing, just like forgiveness, just like rebuilding a life. This morning I received the last payment from Michael, $3,300, the 24th payment. With that, he completed the $80,000 he owed me. He came to bring it in person as always. But this time was different. He came with someone. A young woman about 30 with a kind smile and intelligent eyes. Her name was Andrea. She was an elementary school teacher. "Mom," Michael said with a mix of nervousness and pride, "I want you to meet someone special." Andrea extended her hand with genuine warmth. "Mrs. Thompson, Michael has told me so much about you. It's an honor to meet you." "The pleasure is all mine." We went inside. I made coffee and brought out the tres leches cake I had made that morning, not knowing I'd have guests. We sat in the living room, the three of us, and for the first time in years, the conversation flowed naturally. Andrea was smart, polite from a working-class background. She wasn't wearing designer clothes or expensive bags. She wore simple jeans, a nice but simple blouse, and comfortable shoes. You could tell she was real, that she wasn't with Michael for his money or his status, because Michael didn't have any of those things anymore. She was with him for who he was now, not for who he pretended to be. "How did you two meet?" I asked. Andrea looked at Michael tenderly. "At the St. Joseph's nursing home. I was taking my third-grade students for a reading activity with the seniors, and there was Michael helping Mrs. Gable walk in the garden. I almost fell with her," Michael said, laughing. "Andrea had to come save us both. And after that we just kept running into each other." Andrea continued. "I went on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He went on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but we started coordinating to be there on the same days, to better help the seniors." "Obviously," Michael added with a little smile. Andrea blushed. "Right, only for that reason." I watched them smile at each other, and something in my chest felt warm. My son was in love, but not in the superficial way he had been with Sarah. This was different, more mature, more real. "Mom," Michael said after a while, "I finished my community service last week, 500 hours complete. Really, congratulations. And today I'm bringing you the last payment. With this, the entire debt is settled." He put the envelope of money on the table, and he also put down something else, a small box, the same box from the Longines watch. "Do you remember what I told you 2 years ago?" I nodded. "That when I finished paying what I owed, when I finished my 500 hours, when I felt like I deserved it, that would be the day I'd wear your watch." He opened the box. The watch was shining, beautiful, intact. Today is that day. He took off the cheap digital watch he had worn for 2 years. He placed it on the table carefully, as if it were a treasure. "This watch," he said, touching it with respect, "was with me through the worst and best times of my life. It reminded me every day that I was paying for my mistakes, that I was working for something bigger than myself, that I was rebuilding my life from scratch." Then he picked up the Longines. "And this watch," he continued, his voice breaking a little, "represents everything I lost and everything I got back. It represents your love, your patience, your strength. It represents the man I want to be, the man I should have been all along." He put the watch on his wrist. It fit perfectly. "Thank you, Mom, for this gift, for this lesson, for everything." My eyes filled with tears. "You're welcome, son. I'm proud of you." Andrea watched us, her eyes shining. "Michael told me everything," she said softly. "What he did to you, what you did. And I want you to know I admire your courage so much. Not all mothers have the strength to let their children fall so they can learn to fly." Her words touched my heart. "Fly?" I asked. "Yes, because now Michael is free. Free from the lies, free from the debt, free from the person he was pretending to be. And he's building a real honest life with his own 2 hands." She was right. My son was flying. It took 2 years. 2 years of hard work, of difficult nights, of facing his own darkness. But he had done it. After they left, I sat in the living room for a long time. I looked at the envelope with the last payment, $80,000, recovered. Not because I desperately needed it, but because it was important for Michael to take responsibility. And he had, month after month, for 24 months, without failing once. I took the envelope and put it in my safe. I was going to use that money for something special. I didn't know what yet, but something told me I would know at the right time. That night, as I made dinner just for myself, the phone rang. It was Linda. "Sis, how are you? What did you do for your birthday?" "I got the best gift." "What?" "Michael came over. He brought his girlfriend, and he gave me the last payment. He's all paid up." I heard a happy scream on the other end of the line. "Thank God. And how does he look? How is he?" "Different. Completely different. He looks happy, humble, real." "I'm so happy to hear that. And you? How are you?" "Good. Better than good. I'm at peace." "You deserve it, Emily. You deserve all the peace in the world." After we hung up, I went out to the garden with a cup of tea. The night was cool, starry, perfect. I sat on my favorite bench and looked up at the sky. "David," I said softly, as I had so many times these past 2 years. "You were right. We had to let him fall. It hurt. God, how it hurt. But it worked." The wind blew, gently rustling the leaves of the oak tree, and I felt like David answered me, not with words, just with peace. The next few months were calm. Michael came to visit once a month, always with Andrea. Sometimes they invited me out to eat. Other times they came over and we cooked together. One Sunday in August, Michael came with news. "Mom, I got promoted at the hardware store. I'm the supervisor of the building supply department now. It comes with a raise." "That's wonderful, son. And Andrea and I are saving. We want to rent an apartment together, something small but ours." "That sounds perfect." He was quiet for a moment, as if gathering the courage to say something. "What is it?" I asked. "Mom, do you think Someday, you could come to the apartment when we get it. See it. Have dinner with us. I smiled. Of course I will. His face lit up. Really, really, I would love that. And there's one more thing. What? He pulled a small box from his pocket. He opened it. Inside was a simple ring. It wasn't gold or diamonds. It was silver with a small, modest stone. I'm going to propose to Andrea, but I wanted to ask for your blessing first. My heart skipped a beat. Are you sure? Completely. She's different from everyone else. She makes me want to be better. She accepts me as I am, and she loves me not for what I have, but for who I am. Then you have my blessing and my complete happiness. We hugged, and I felt like we had finally closed a circle. The circle of pain, the circle of betrayal, the circle of loss, and we had opened a new one, the circle of healing, the circle of forgiveness, the circle of rebuilding. In December, Michael and Andrea got engaged. She said yes through happy tears, and they invited me to a small, intimate dinner to celebrate. It was just the two of them, me, Linda, who flew in from Chicago, and Andrea's parents. It was a beautiful night, full of laughter stories and plans for the future, and for the first time in years, I felt part of a real family. Not a perfect family, not a family without scars, but an honest family, a family that had been through the fire and come out stronger. When the night ended and everyone left, I stayed in my house feeling complete. I sat on my bed and took the old photograph from my nightstand, the one I had always kept. The photo of Michael at 5 years old, hugging me in my mother's garden, smiling that clean, innocent smile. I looked at it for a long time, and I realized it didn't hurt anymore. I no longer wondered what had happened to that little boy, because now I understood. That boy had grown up. He had made terrible mistakes. He had gotten completely lost. But he had found his way back, and the man he had become was in many ways better than the boy he was, because he had learned. He had fallen. He had suffered, and he had chosen to get back up. I put the photo back and took out something else I had kept for 2 years, the cheap digital watch Michael had worn all that time. He had given it to me when he put on the Longines. I want you to keep this, he had said, as a reminder. So when you ever doubt if you did the right thing, you can look at it and know that you did, that it was worth it, that you saved me. I held it in my hands. It was a simple black plastic watch with green digital numbers. It cost maybe $20, but it was worth more than any Rolex because it represented humility, it represented work, it represented transformation. I put it back in my nightstand next to the photograph. 2 symbols, 2 stages, the before and the after, the fall and the flight. That night I slept deeply, and I dreamed of David. We were in the garden under the oak tree. He was holding me. "You did well, my love," he said. "You took care of our son in the only way that truly mattered. You didn't protect him from the consequences. You prepared him to face them. That is true love." I woke up with tears in my eyes but with a smile on my face, because I finally understood. Love is not giving everything without limits. Love is not sacrificing yourself until you disappear. Love is not letting them destroy you just because that's what mothers do. No, true love is having the courage to say no. True love is setting boundaries. True love is letting go of the person you love so they can learn to fly. And sometimes the greatest love you can give is to love yourself first. Because only when you love yourself, when you respect yourself, when you defend your own dignity, only then can you love others in a healthy way. Only then can you give without losing yourself. Only then can you be a mother without stopping being a woman. Today, as I write these lines in my journal, as the afternoon sun bathes my garden in golden light, I am at peace. Not because everything is perfect, not because everything is resolved, but because I learned. I learned that I can be strong without being cold. I learned I can forgive without forgetting. I learned I can love without being a victim. And I learned the most important lesson of all. I am 62 years old, and my life is not over. In fact, in many ways, it's just beginning, because now I am free, free from fear, free from guilt, free from living for others, And that freedom, that peace that reclaimed dignity, is worth more than any house. It's worth more than any money. It's worth more than any material thing in this world. If my story helps just one woman open her eyes, it will have been worth it. If my story helps just one mother understand that she can love her children without destroying herself, it will have been worth it. If my story helps just one person understand that it is never too late to defend yourself, to set boundaries, to say, "This is not okay," then all the pain will have had meaning, because sometimes the deepest wounds teach us the most important lessons, and sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. My name is Emily Thompson. I am 62 years old, and this is my story. The story of a woman who was betrayed by her own son, who faced the greatest pain a mother can feel, who made the hardest decision of her life, and who came out on the other side stronger, wiser, and more complete. If you are going through something similar, if someone you love is hurting you, if you are in a situation where you don't know whether to be strong or to be a good mother, let me tell you something. Being strong is being a good mother. Defending yourself is being a good mother. Setting boundaries is being a good mother, because you cannot love others well if you do not love yourself first, and it is never ever too late to start. Thank you for listening to the end. Thank you for walking with me on this journey of pain and healing, and remember, every day is a chance to choose dignity over submission, to choose self-love over sacrifice, to choose truth over comfort. Choose well, because your life is worth it. Your peace is worth it. You are worth it. Thank you for listening to the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and hit the bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a new woman, a new life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change someone's entire day. God bless you, and until next time.